Okay, welcome back to another vid, Friday Brew. Cup of tea ready, obviously. So yeah, the first thing that I want to talk about, and as ever there's timestamps, which I've been doing now for, well, ages. So if you want to skip to any particular topic, then please feel free. But the first thing I want to talk about, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but it's a topic which a lot of people go through within gaming, in the gaming community, but isn't really talked about all that often, and it's gaming burnout. And I don't mean the game, which is a good game actually, Burnout. They should bring that back. I know Burnout Paradise came out, the remastered version. It's decent, but for me, the normal Burnout games are the best, like Burnout Revenge and Burnout Takedown. That for me is proper Burnout. But anyway, speaking of gaming burnout, I have definitely been going through that for quite some time, but I'm coming out the right end now. I've kind of gone through it, and I'd say for me, you see, I've always, ever since I've started making YouTube vids anyway, I've always from time to time gone through a bit of burnout, a little bit of it, where I buy too much or I'm buying for a particular system that, you know, I'm not really that bothered about, but I still buy games for it anyway. I guess it becomes a bit of an addiction, doesn't it? And you see other people showing games on YouTube and you influence, very easily influenced. I have been in the past anyway. And so I've gone through all that over the years. But I reckon it started maybe about 15 to 18 months ago, so a fair amount of time ago, but also not that long ago, to the point where it's still relatively recent. And I started to almost look at pretty much everything I had, and I started to view it really negatively. Like, why am I buying this stuff? What's the point? Am I playing it? You know, I even, and I feel a bit ashamed to say it, but I did go through the whole thing of, am I too old for it? Am I too old to be buying all these games and to showing them on YouTube and all that kind of stuff? The answer is you're not too old. If you like doing something, then that's the right answer. That's good for you, and no one should tell you otherwise. Gaming still has that stigma, doesn't it? You know, you could walk into like someone's room, like their living room or their bedroom, their spare room, whatever it is, and they could have loads of vinyl like I've got behind me, or CDs, and you wouldn't bat an eyelid. You'd be like, oh, that's really cool, that's nice, you're into music, good. You know, or it could be books. You know, like you've got a library, and no one, again, would bat an eyelid. That's fine to have. That's seen as kind of you quite educated, you know, to have all those books. Good on you. You know, even movies, really, to a slightly lesser degree, people don't really care. But you start showing off games or having a big wall full of games behind you, and people still have that stigma of it being a bit geeky and a bit childish. And it's quite sad in a way, but I do understand it. I understand why people think that way. But I think my generation are the first proper generation. Yeah, there's a few before, you know, a few years older than me, but I think my generation are the first ones where gaming has kind of always been there, from the tail end of like the 8-bit era through to the 16-bit era, the glory days. And so it's always been part of me. So it's not really geeky to me, it's not really that weird. I mean, yes, as I've got older, I do play less, but I do still enjoy it. I really do. I've found myself as well going back more to the older stuff as I get older, but I do still like modern stuff too. As nostalgic as I am as a person, and I really am, overly so, you know, I am very much looking forward to the future. I'm very excited about the future. And I don't just mean with gaming, I just mean in life. You know, I'm not stuck in the past, I'm not a Luddite. I very much embrace technology sometimes, but I like the old stuff too. But yeah, I went through the whole gaming crisis. I think there's another game, not Burnout, but now we're talking about Crisis. They need to make another Crisis game as well. But when was the last one? Was it Crisis 3, I think? And I've gone off a complete tangent here. So, yeah, I went through the whole kind of questioning what I'm buying, why I'm buying it, and all the rest of it. And my collection, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, I've never considered myself a collector. If you do, okay, I understand it. Because I do buy games, I do keep hold of them, so in a sense, it's kind of collecting, but I've never collected in regards to I'm going after a certain amount, or I'm going after a certain genre. It's just that I'll buy a game, and I tend generally to keep it. So I'm kind of collecting in that sense, but not a collector, if you see what I mean. More of a hoarder, I think, more than anything. But yeah, as I was saying, in more recent times, I've really looked at what I've been buying, and questioning why I've got it. Am I playing it? What's the point? Why did I buy it? What's the reasons I bought it? And I've just kind of gone through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And over the last year and a bit, I've sold a lot. I'd say I've sold maybe 75% of my gaming, including consoles and obviously games. And I feel so much better for it. I really do. I've got rid of a lot of stuff, things which I just looked at and I thought, well, do you know what? Yes, I am fond of it. I do have nostalgia for it. But am I playing it? And am I likely to play it? So it wasn't really a financial decision, although that helped, getting a little bit of money in. It was just more of a case of feng shui, just getting rid of things, what's the point having it, basically? And it even affected things like my SNES games. I nearly said collection there, I guess in a way it kind of was. I sold a heck of a lot of SNES games, not all of them, because I love the system, and I'll continue to buy for it as well. But I made the classic mistake of buying loads of games and not really playing them. And I found, surprise, surprise in hindsight, I found that by buying them all, they were constantly arriving. And they're not cheap as well, SNES games. So I was spending a bloody fortune on these things. And they were constantly arriving. And don't get me wrong, I was really pleased to get them, because I wasn't just buying any old rubbish. I was buying games that I really wanted. But they were arriving constantly every week. And because, there's only 24 hours in a day and you can't spend all day gaming. Well, I can't anyway. I'm very lucky if I managed to get a few hours of gaming in a week. So I was finding out all these games were arriving. I was unboxing them. It was a buzz. It was a hit. It felt really good to do it, to take it out of the packing in the box and to put it on a shelf and to think, yeah, I've got that game now. Kind of sit back, look at the shelf and think, really pleased to have that. Nostalgic and all those kind of connections that I had to the game. It was ticking all those boxes. But I wasn't getting around to playing them. And then the following week, another game or two would arrive that I'd spent another 100 or more on. So all this money's been pissed away on games. And they're all going on a shelf. It's all looking great. The collection, again, that word again, the collection's expanding and it's looking good. But at the same time, it's really starting to weigh on my shoulders at this point. And it started to become a burden. It became the classic, the collection is owning me, the word again, me not owning the games. And I felt consumed. I felt I had all these games to play, probably 70 or 80 Super Nintendo games, all of which I wanted, but 20 of them I'd played. It was ridiculous. And I'll let you into a bit of a secret, but you may remember over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, I've threatened to do a Super Nintendo, a SNES collection vid at Christmas. And of course I haven't done it. And the first year, I think I was just busy, because it's a busy time of the year. The second year, which is I think the Christmas just gone, or maybe it was the one before, I can't remember. I think it was the one just gone. I actually did go to do the video, but I didn't set the recording equipment up. Well, recording equipment. Press record on iMovie on my iMac. I didn't do that. I just basically went over to my games, and it makes me sound like a lunatic, but I kind of just briefly, kind of out loud, and inwardly as well, I kind of sort of talked about the games a little bit, because I wanted to sort of know what I was going to say on camera. And what I found when I was going through all my SNES games was that, like I said, 20% of them I'd played. And the rest of them I hadn't played, and I didn't know what to say. So I was kind of sort of holding it up and thinking, well, it's just a platformer, it's tough, it's good graphics, and then I move on to the next one. It was a rubbish description, because I hadn't played the games, so I didn't know what to say. And I was going through all the SNES games, and I thought, I can't put this video out there. It would be dreadful, because I wasn't talking about the games. I wasn't telling you what I thought of them, how they played, what great kind of mechanics it had behind the gameplay. I wasn't playing the games, and I thought, I can't do this vid, it'll be dreadful. So that was a wake-up call for me, and I started to sell a lot of them. I didn't sell them all, like I say. I've still kept back quite a few, but I sold a lot of them, and I'm essentially starting from scratch. So yes, it will mean in the future that technically speaking, I'm going to be buying back a few SNES games which I've sold. Not too many, but there'll be a few. But I'm in the right place now. I'm in the right place, where every game I buy for the right reasons. I play it, I enjoy it, and then once I've played it, not necessarily finished it, because some games are really hard, but at least once I've really got to grips with it, I'll then buy another. So it's taken me a good few months, but I've really got to a place now where I used to be, where I will buy a game and play it. I'm buying it for the right reasons. I'm not buying it for bragging rights. I'm not buying it to show on a vid for, like I say, for bragging rights and to look cool and all that kind of stuff. I'm buying games when I want, when the time is right, and I'm buying them for the right reasons. And it feels great. So if anyone's going through that gaming burnout, you've got too much, I advise you to sell. Just sell all the stuff that you don't want. If it's something which you've got which you like, which maybe you're just not really playing right now, then absolutely store it away. Store it away, because what's the point selling it if you're just going to buy it back? I know I've kind of done that to a degree with the SNES games, But I'm not that bothered about getting some of them back anytime soon. Some of them were just, even though they were good, they were like, I just kind of bought them on a bit of a whim, on the recommendation maybe of others, without putting too much thought into it. But if it comes to systems and things, which you're not that bothered about, I advise getting rid of them. If it's something, like I say, which you play once in a blue moon, then keep it. It's like the PS1. I always talk about that system. I really love that console, but I hardly ever play it. But when I do play it, I have fun. So there's no point selling it, because I'd just buy it back. So what's the point going through the whole rigmarole and hassle of listing it, selling it, sending it, paying shipping fees and eBay postage and all that kind of stuff, PayPal fees, and then you'll probably buy it back for more than what you sold it for. So anything you want to keep it. But if you look at something and you kind of question why you've got it, I advise getting rid of it. But, each to their own. But yeah, so in more recent times, these last kind of few weeks especially, I've really got back into my groove of enjoying gaming again. I'm really enjoying the SNES. I'm really enjoying the Mega Drive. I'm just having a lot of fun with it. I've weeded out a lot of systems, old and new, and I'm kind of concentrating on older stuff with a flavour, with a hint of modern stuff. Because I couldn't do without modern consoles. I don't need all of them. I don't need all the PlayStations and all the Xbox, but I at least have to have one or two, to keep up with the times and technology and all the rest of it. And it's working for me. So if you're going through the same thing, like I say, maybe have a bit of a clear out. Not just will you feel better for yourself and you'll have more of a focus on the systems which really mean something to you, but you'll get a bit of money as well, winning. So that's the first topic. Like I say, it's nothing which is really talked about too much. Not really, not within the circles of the community that I kind of socialise in anyway. It's usually like maybe big channels will put up a video every now and again, but it really confused me in more recent times. It's questioned my gaming, where I stand with it, whether I even wanted to give it up completely. I kind of went there just for a few minutes, but it did cross my mind. Am I done with it? Am I over the whole gaming thing? I'm not, really, because like I say, it's always been part of my life. I don't play games as much as I used to. I'm not into it as much as I used to be, but I still have fun. So if you still like something, then don't stop doing it. It's common sense, isn't it, really? But even on Twitter in more recent weeks and months, and I'd say over the past year or so, since this kind of collecting thing really started, and not just collecting again, but the whole buying and consuming and hoarding, the whole gaming thing, since I kind of took hold of me and I started to be very negative, I started to take that negativity onto Twitter, and I never used to be like that. I used to be someone who I think a lot of people would go to for sound advice, rational advice, about collections and about what to buy and when to buy it and priorities and focuses. I used to be that person, and then over the last year I've noticed I've turned into someone who used to start whinging or began whinging about gaming, and it was a negative place that I was in, but I'm out of it now and I feel much better for it. So anyway, I've rinsed that topic. These are meant to be short vids. It's going to be another hour, isn't it? Ridiculous. So we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to what I've been watching, because there's quite a few things really. The first one I watched last month, and it's called Afterlife by Ricky Gervais, and it's really, really good. I'm sure if you've not seen it, you've probably heard of it. I believe it's a Netflix exclusive, so most people, or well, not most, a lot of people have Netflix. If you do have it, you're doing yourself a disservice not to watch it. So yeah, get round to watching it as soon as you can. It's really, really good. It basically surrounds Ricky Gervais, his character. I can't remember the actual names of the characters, but his character has gone through a terrible time. His wife passed away quite recently. It doesn't specifically, I don't think, say when, but it's obviously happened quite recently in context to the show. And what she did is she recorded, before she passed away, she recorded like a lot of short vids, giving him like kind of tips on things to do, reminders like take the bins out, feed the dog, all that kind of stuff. And don't feel down, carry on with life. Life's great. She knows that he's going to be sad from time to time, but keep your chin up and life's amazing. Just remember that and just keep going. But he's having a tough time, obviously, as you can imagine, because she's not there anymore and they used to do everything together. It's like they were a tag team, a duo, and now she's no longer there and he's having to do everything by himself. So he's really angry. He's a really angry person. He's taking out his frustration. He's venting, to anyone who's there, to the public, to people who he works with. And it's interesting to see. He's at his wit's end. He thinks about killing himself, which is obviously terrible. and it shows this one particular shocking scene, and it actually made me literally look at it and go, oh Jesus, almost out loud. It was really kind of harrowing as a scene. I feel queasy talking about it, so I won't go into too much detail. But he's in the bath and he's kind of contemplating life, like what's the point for him going on as he sees it, and he's seconds away from doing something he shouldn't have done, and the dog kind of comes in, barks, and obviously wants fed, so that distracts him. So he doesn't do, thankfully, I know it's just a TV show, but of course he doesn't do what the show kind of hinted at what was going to happen. It was really, for me anyway, it was like, oh Jesus, very kind of, almost like a distraught kind of scene, really. So anyway, so he goes downstairs, feeds the dog, goes to work, and carries on with life. But he's venting, he really is. He's very angry, he's very kind of snide, he's snapping at people, he's really negative. But at the same time, it's kind of like a real kind of, who cares? He can be who he wants to be. He can say whatever he wants, because what's the worst that can happen? He loses his job, he gets fired, so what? Or he makes someone else angry or upset. But so what? Because he's going through a terrible time, so it's like he's not bothered if he drags everyone else down too. He's just at the lowest ebb, the lowest of the low. So that's basically the premise of the show. And there's people who he works with, his friends, and they're trying to, and family members, they're trying to kind of help him get out of this and to go out with him and to go to clubs, and that kind of backfires a little bit at a stand-up event, and then he meets someone eventually, and so he kind of goes through that kind of interesting dynamic of having someone who you love, like his partner. I don't know if it was his wife, I think it was, or even long-term partner, whatever it was, and then to go through all that and then to meet someone else and to find that happiness at the end of the season, which is a bit of a spoiler alert, but everyone's talked about it. And it doesn't really go into too much detail anyway about that, it just kind of hints at it more than anything else. So that's very interesting kind of dynamics. So it's a really kind of, it's a very sad show, it really is, particularly early on. But it's also funny. It's typical Ricky Gervais. You're gonna laugh, you'll probably shed a few tears. If you say you don't, or if you don't, well, good luck for not doing so, because it's just that kind of show. It will really hit home. It's very kind of powerful in what it does, but no sooner are you shedding a few tears than you're actually laughing at some genuinely funny moments, some real moments that happen in people's lives, which aren't really covered on TV because it's things that, you shouldn't really say in this day and age. But he just says it because he's got nothing to lose. Who cares what people think? So I kind of like that aspect. It keeps it very, very real. So yeah, I definitely recommend it. It is sad. It will get the waterworks going, without question. So if you're one of those people who maybe you watch TV with other people, family members, friends, whatever it is, then you may want to watch it on your own, unless you don't mind crying in front of other people, although you may want to disguise it as like a cough or something like that, which I tend to do pretty successfully. So, or a sniff, something will happen, you can feel like you're about to sort of shed a tear, and if you like look away or you concentrate on something, it kind of sometimes goes away and sometimes it can, and then you'll rub your eye or pretend you've got a fly in your eye or something. I've been there, it's ridiculous. So it will make you cry, probably anyway, but it'll also make you laugh. You've got to watch it. I think there's only 6 or 7 episodes, and they're around about 30 minutes each, so it's short. I binge watched it all in one sitting. It was crazy. The only other time I've done that was Stranger Things, and then maybe to a slightly lesser degree, I didn't watch the whole series, but it would be The Man in the High Castle, which I talked about last time. Season 4 coming before the end of the year as well on that shit. Right, next up what I watched is Saving Mr. Banks. So Saving Mr. Banks is basically about P.L. Travers. P.L. Travers wrote Mary Poppins. So the story is essentially about her childhood, although it deals in like the modern era. By modern, I mean at the time when she was kind of like in her late 50s or early 60s, when she met up with Walt Disney, who wanted the rights to make the Mary Poppins movie. But it has flashbacks to her childhood. So she was basically, P.L. Travers was born in Australia. I believe her parent, was it her father who was English? And her mother was Australian, I think. Her father's played by Colin Farrell, does a really good job. And he loves his daughter, or his daughters and his family, don't get me wrong. But he was a drunk. He was addicted to alcohol, and it really ruined his life. Ultimately, it killed him. And so it shows flashbacks to that, about her growing up and how important her family were to her, particularly her father. And then when she was kind of in her late teens or early 20s, she moved to England, moved to London, and then ultimately, several years later, wrote Mary Poppins, which has elements to that story of her childhood. So the story kind of deals, like I say, it has flashbacks to the past, explaining who she is and her characteristics and all that kind of stuff, but it predominantly revolves around her and Walt Disney, maybe should be a Sir to some, if you could knight Americans, which you can't. But yeah, so Walt Disney, I said, they're not Sir Walt Disney. So Walt Disney is played by Tom Hanks. He does a decent job, and he really wants the rights to to Mary Poppins. He wants to make a movie. She's not so keen on it, P.L. Travers, because she wants to keep it as a book and for people to use their imagination and all that kind of stuff. And maybe she's a little bit open to the idea of doing a movie, but the minute he starts talking about having animated sequences, she's like, sorry, no way, you can't do that. I'm not going to allow that. And it's this kind of fight, not a literal fight, but a struggle between them both, because Walt Disney really wants to make this movie. He wants to make it to sell it to all the kids and to families and to people of all ages, I guess. And she's not having it, and he invites her over. Long story short, of course, we all know what happened. The movie does get released. Now, in real life, apparently she wasn't too keen, certainly initially, although I think she warmed to it a little bit as time went on. But in the movie, she wasn't too keen, and again warms to it a little bit. So that's basically what happens in the movie. It's very heartwarming. Again, it's quite sad in places, so it may make you shed a tear or have the odd kind of sniffle here and there. And there's a few comedic moments, so it has that too. So if you're into your Disney, Walt Disney, and you're into your Mary Poppins, and you want maybe a little bit of a backstory as to what happened and her history as a person, then check it out. Of course, it uses a lot of artistic license. It really does. But it's good. I did like it. Okay, so next up, and I've got a prop for this one, it's Beverly Hills Cop, the trilogy. As you can see there, the 3-movie collection. Beverly Hills Cop 1, 2 and 3, obviously. So yeah, I've been watching this over the course of the last 3 weeks. Every Friday I've been watching it, and it's good, but there's a few things in there which, I mean, as a whole it's good, but there's one particular movie which isn't particularly good, and I've got a few issues with, so it's just the way it is. But yeah, Beverly Hills Cop. So the first one came out in 1984. It basically surrounds Axel Foley, Eddie Murphy. There he is, of course. So his friend is shot, one of his kind of his mates that he's known for a long, long time. I think he went to school with him. He went to prison. He came out of prison and got involved, you know, in the murky world again of crime, like he'd been involved in previously, hence going to prison. And they're hanging out together. They're going back to, I think, his friend's hotel room, not for that, just to chill out, I guess, you know. And these kind of masked men, or don't say masked men, they're not masked, but they're bad guys. They appear from nowhere, and they shoot his friend, shoot him dead, Foley, knock him out unconscious. It's kind of a bit of a shocking start, really. So, obviously, Axel Foley is distraught. It's one of his best friends, if not his best friend, and he wants to solve the crime. So, he says he's going to do it. Now, Inspector Todd, who is Axel Foley's boss, basically says, you're not doing it. You can't get involved in this. There's a conflict of interests, so you're not going to be involved on this case. Basically, have a bit of a vacation. You've kind of gone through a tough time. Stay away from this. Have a holiday. And so Eddie Murphy kind of puts 2 and 2 together in his head, and to Inspector Todd, he says, well, yeah, okay, I'll have a vacation, but secretly we all know that Axel Foley is going to use his vacation time to essentially solve the crime, and that's what he does. So he heads on down to Beverly Hills, where his friend used to work. There's a lot of contacts there, so he kind of puts 2 and 2 together, so something's going on in Beverly Hills. So he goes down there, and he investigates the crime by himself. He goes into where he thinks the bad guys are, disguises himself as like someone who's selling flowers, like a florist, as if he's got like a delivery, walks into there unannounced, and he starts questioning the bad guys. And the bad guys essentially call security in, more bad guys. They take him out to the ground floor and they throw him through the window, through the glass window. It shatters everywhere. And almost instantly, the police turn up and they arrest him. And Axel Foley's like, why are you arresting me? I've been thrown through a window. Why aren't you arresting them? They take him back to the police station, and they find out, obviously, he's a cop. And basically, there's 2 other cops, the trio that we all kind of know, which is Axel Foley, obviously. There's Judge Reinhold, who plays Billy Rosewood, and then there's John Taggart. Not that Taggart, but John Taggart, not the Scottish one. who is played by John Ashton. So they're charged with basically keeping an eye on Axel Foley, watch him in town, make sure he doesn't get involved in this case and cause pandemonium in Beverly Hills. And they're kind of spying on him and all the rest of it, making sure that he's not doing anything. And eventually they kind of befriend him, they fall for him, for his kind of friendly charms and all the rest of it. They realise that Axel Foley's going to do it anyway, he's going to solve the crime, so they may as well kind of all solve it together. So that's essentially what happens. All three kind of team up. The two cops, Rosewood and Taggart, they shouldn't be doing it, but they do it anyway. They kind of trust him, they get a hunch that he's right, and they solve the crime at the end of the day. It's typical kind of standard plot to it, Basically, Axel Foley saves a day. So it came out in 1984. It still holds up well. For me, it's absolutely brilliant. I really, really liked it. So moving on the following week to Beverly Hills Cop II. I don't know why I'm holding this up again, but I will. It's the same bloody cover. Beverly Hills Cop II. I'll have started to put some pictures up on the screen for you to see. But yeah, so Beverly Hills Cop II. So basically, Axel is in Detroit, and he finds out that Lieutenant Bogomil, I think that's how you pronounce it, has been shot. He's been shot for Left 4 Dead. He was very close to finding the clues and solving, I think it's called the alphabet crime. So, or the alphabet crimes. So basically, the bad guys are leaving kind of clues like alphabets and letters and stuff at the crime scene. So Lieutenant Bogomil is very close to catching it. The bad guys know this, obviously, so they shoot him. This is the one starring Bridget Nielsen as well. The tall, leggy blonde, like 8'7", I think she is, there or thereabouts. And so this is all happening in Beverly Hills, and Axel Foley sees this. He's in Detroit. He's back in Detroit, and he sees this on the TV. It's made the news, and he can't believe it because, well, he knows Lieutenant Bogomil, who helped him out, and vice versa in the previous movie, right at the end of the film, and he got to kind of be his friend and all that kind of stuff. So he's shocked. He can't believe it. Someone else who he knows is being shot and left for dead. He survives. Spoiler alert. So Axel Foley goes to Beverly Hills, and he wants to essentially solve the crime, obviously, because his friend has been shot, and this Bogomil is the boss as well of Rosewood and Taggart, so they're all kind of involved. They're all linked now, so they've got previous, they've got a history, they've got a connection. So Axel Foley was always going to get involved, even if he shouldn't. So basically, in Beverly Hills, there's a new police chief called Harold Lutz, and Harold Lutz is a real kind of hot-tempered, very angry, stereotypical, kind of almost New York kind of boss, even though this is in Beverly Hills. He's always shouting at people, very unrealistic in what he wants. He's just a real swine to work for. And Rosewood and Taggart are kind of failing at a few tasks, so he threatens to sack them, to fire them, and takes them off the main task and says, you're not doing that anymore. You're so rubbish at your job, which they weren't, but you're so rubbish at it, you're doing traffic duty. So they've been kind of, they're doing all these menial police jobs, which they don't want to be doing. So Axel Foley gets to town, teams up with Taggart and Rosewood, and they're saying, we can't help you out, Axel, because we've got to do the traffic duty. We'll get into trouble if we help you out. And Axel Foley's like, come on, it's Lieutenant Bogomil. He's our friend. We've kind of got to help him out. So eventually, of course, they agree to do that. And then ultimately solve the crime, all three of them, and save the day. And then right at the end of the movie, it gets a bit of a spoiler, but Lutz, the hot-tempered, angry moron police chief, is fired because essentially Rosewood stands up to him for once, and then everyone kind of gangs up against him, and then Lutz is fired on the spot by, I guess, his superior, and Bogomil, the lieutenant, is appointed the new police chief. So, like I say, he survives. So, again, a typical situation where Axel Foley saves the day. It's on to Beverly Hills Cop III, and this is where it all goes a little bit wrong, shall we say. So, once again, Axel is in Detroit. Of course he is. Always starts off in Detroit. And the movie starts where it's like this kind of a gang of thieves, and they run like a local chop shop. So, stealing bits off cars, putting things together, and then selling them on and all the rest of it. And as Axel Foley is waiting outside with some of his police crew, he's waiting to go in. He's just got to time it right because he knows the thieves are in there. He just wants to time it right, catch them red-handed, and arrest them. But before he has an opportunity to do so, some other bad guys come in, or who prove to be bad guys. You don't know at the time, although you kind of suspect it. They go in there, and what the thieves have done is they've stolen a car for these bad guys who've just entered the building. And in that car, there's a load of loot, like crates with like kind of, I think it's got like US government kind of emblazoned all over it. So it's like cargo, it could be money, I can't remember, I think it is money, I can't quite remember. But it's made obvious that it's stuff which is kind of top secret stuff. So the thieves kind of show the bad guys, oh, here it is, we've got it for you. And then the bad guys shoot all the thieves. And so that was kind of like an explosive start. I thought, was that necessary? Because they weren't armed, but nonetheless, they shot them anyway. So amongst all the firing which is going on, Eddie Murphy's getting ready to go in. Now, before he does, his Inspector Todd from the first movie, he goes in there alone, and he gets shot. Again, a lot of spoilers in this. He gets shot, and ultimately does pass away. And it's kind of really cringy, because not just, the opening scene was really weird. I can't remember the song that they're singing. Oh, I think it was it Come See About Me? Maybe that was the song that they're singing. And all the thieves, the car mechanics, they're all acting out the dance routine. It was really weird. I mean, I like the song, but it was really odd. A really bizarre start to the movie. So that was kind of very strange. And then the way Inspector Todd dies, in like kind of Eddie Murphy, Axel Foley, I've done it again, in Axel Foley's arms, the dialogue they had between them was really kind of cheesy and corny. So again, I had a problem with that. Even the intro to the movie was very strange, very kind of dark and gritty, and I think a train going by. It was not quite the sun and the kind of the glamour, if you like, of Beverly Hills, with like, you know, bikini-clad babes walking around and rollerblades and you know, like the ports and the ships going by and the trucks and the cars and the hustle and the bustle of Beverly Hills life. It was very kind of dark and gritty. So already this movie's been going for 5 minutes, and several things have happened where I've kind of looked at it and thought, this is weird. It's very poorly executed, this. Very poorly put together. But nonetheless, I was happy to go along with it. So, yeah, basically Axel Foley tracks the bad guys to Beverly Hills. Of course he does, because it's got to be set in Beverly Hills. And he meets up with Billy Rosewood, who now has been promoted to this new kind of unpronounceable position, which he holds with like 1,000 letters prefixed before, you know, whatever they stand for. And they make a bit of a joke of that. And it's explained very early on that the other guy in the trio, Taggart, has retired. So he's not in this movie. So another warning sign, early doors, that this isn't going to be very good. I don't know the real story. I've not looked into it. I don't think it's a case of they didn't want him in it. Maybe he didn't want to be in it. Maybe he was busy. But either way, he wasn't in this one. So it's explained very early that he's retired to like Hawaii or whatever he's doing these days. And but instead, they do have a third member of the team to replace Taggart. But it's another guy called, what's his bloody name? It's Flint, John Flint, played by is it Hector Belzino or something in real life? I can't quite remember. So yeah, it's another John they've got. How lazy is that? So the new character is also called John, albeit spelled Jon, I think, as opposed to John, the standard way. So not just do they share the same name and he's a part of the trio, but this guy, John Flint, looks exactly like John Taggart. He's an aging guy, and he's probably like late 50s or so. He's got a moustache, he's balding with like a little bit of hair, but not a full head of hair. He's a little bit overweight. And so this has been so lazy, they might as well have just called him Taggart, just pretended it was Taggart. For all intents and purposes, it was basically the same guy. So, but anyway, so that's explained that Taggart's retired now, and this new guy's kind of gonna get involved as like the trio. So that's essentially what happens. They all kind of save the day, obviously. Now, I'm fast forwarding right to, well, but actually, basically, let me just say that the plot revolves around this place called Wonderworld. And Wonderworld is essentially, it's Disney, basically, but in Beverly Hills. It's a theme park. It's where the bad guys from the opening scene, who shot all the thieves, that's kind of where one of them works, and there's this big cover, well, several of them work. There's a big cover-up kind of going on there, but no one suspects it because usually they're so nice and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it all takes place pretty much in the theme park. So a lot of rides exploding. It's busy with families and people of all ages, of course, like you'd expect from a theme park. And so that's essentially what happens. He saves the day. But right at the end of the movie, now I'm going to reveal a bit of a spoiler here. So if you don't want to hear it, skip forward for about 30, 60 seconds. So right at the end, all three of them, so you've got John Flint, Axel Foley being the main guy, of course, and Billy Rosewood. All three of them are shot. Now, they don't die, of course, but they are all shot, and it's ridiculous. And especially the situation of how Flint is shot. Flint is shot because Eddie Murphy is shooting the bad guy, and the bullet goes through the bad guy, ricochets through him and hits John Flint in the arm, or something like the shoulder, so he's shot. Just before that, Axel Foley, I should say, was Eddie Murphy's fine. Axel Foley was shot in the shoulder and in the foot by the bad guy, so he's been shot twice. So then the bad guy gets shot. John Flint is shot accidentally by Axel Foley. They sit down, they have a laugh about it, going, oh, bloody hell, can you believe it? You know, you've been shot in the shoulder, you have been shot in the shoulder and the foot. And then in staggers Billy Rosewood, who you do see maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes before, being shot by what looked like an Uzi by one of the bad guys, just before Billy Rosewood, shot him again. I think it showed him shooting again anyway. Billy Rosewood basically shot him, but he didn't kill him, so then the guy shot him back. But anyway, so these two, Foley and Flint, are sitting there having a laugh about being shot. Then this kind of silly music comes on, almost comedic music. Billy Rosewood walks in, staggering in, with blood all over the front of his shirt, to the point where it isn't funny. It just isn't funny. You're watching it thinking, Jesus, this is potentially serious. Are they going to kill the character? And they're laughing about it. It's unbelievable. And then Billy Rosewood collapses, faints, I presume, obviously. But you're thinking, has he died? Surely not. But again, they're continuing to laugh, going, should we call an ambulance? And it's just the most inappropriate time to laugh ever in a movie. So all three of them have been shot, one of them very seriously. You can just tell when he walks in, you're like, Jesus. And then it cuts away basically to the end of the movie, and it's this sort of like a reception is being held. Like the three heroes, if you like, they saved the day, particularly Axel Foley. But it is quite funny to a degree, because they're all in like wheelchairs, and they're all kind of plastered up with their arms in slings and their legs up and all that kind of stuff. It's silly, but it's quite funny. And then right at the end of the movie, one of the characters who you get to know kind of halfway through, who's one of the women who works at the park, her character name is Janice Perkins, and she gets kind of romantically involved. Not full on, but you can see where that's going with Axel Foley. And at the end of the movie, they're all on stage, all three of them. She's there as like someone who works for at Wonderworld. She is about to wheel him off in the wheelchair, and she says something really cheesy and corny like, do you want to go on like the love ride or something? It's really cheesy. And Axel Foley's got this big grin on his face, and the camera kind of stops, especially in old movies in the 80s, and well, this was 94, but that kind of time period where the movie just kind of stops, freeze frame, cheesy grin, and then it kind of pans out and it's the end of the movie. It's so ridiculous. A dreadful ending, but kind of funny. The literal ending is kind of funny, but leading up to it where they were shot was farcical. So yeah, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and 2, outstanding. I really like them both. Beverly Hills Cop 3, Jesus, it's really, really poor. I will watch it again, many times I'm sure in the future, but this is the first time I've seen it, probably since it came out. So yeah, I didn't think it held up very well. The only saving grace it's got for it is it's Beverly Hills Cop, it's Axel Foley, it's the Beverly Hills franchise, and I do really like it. But there's so many flaws in it, it's unbelievable. I think Eddie Murphy has since gone on record as saying that it's his least favourite as well. Big time, and that he shouldn't have done it, basically. And there's constant talk of a fourth. I hope it happens. Obviously, the last one was 94, so we're knocking on a bit now. But I would like to see it. It would be kind of like a redemption. But for me, I'd like to see it with the original cast of Taggart being in it, of course, who wasn't in the third one, as I've just explained. I mean, he must be knocking 80 now. It's something like that. 70-something, surely. But nonetheless, I'd like to see him in it. And Judge Reinhold is probably in his late 50s or maybe early 60s. So he's still young enough to do it. And Eddie Murphy, I think, is late 50s as well. So he could do it too. So I would like to see it, but whether it's going to happen or not, only time will tell. So anyway, I've really kind of milked the whole what I'm currently watching, but I have been watching a lot. Now, what I've been playing, I'm just going to talk about a couple of these. So firstly, I've been playing this. It's Bad Company. Battlefield Bad Company. This is the gold edition. Comes in a slipcase on the 360. I think it comes in a slipcase on the PS3, but it might have a bit of a sort of a metallic kind of borderline steelbook case, I think. I'm not quite sure, I can't remember. But yeah, the gold edition is basically extra weapons and stuff for the maps, DLC, multiplayer. You don't really need it, especially in this day and age. I'm not even sure if people are still playing it online. And but yeah, and it also comes with like extras, like a documentary on the disc, which I've not watched, but I saw a few clips on YouTube. It looks kind of interesting. But yeah, I really like this. I think this is one of those kind of sleeper hits or hidden gems that those terms I'm not massively keen on, but, you know, nonetheless, it's, what else can you call it? Other than just saying it's a game that not many people talk about. So I really like it. If you like your sort of, I was going to say first-person shooter, it's more of like an open world game, kind of a little bit like the Saboteur, which I showed a couple of months ago, where you can go off and do your own thing, but there's less activity, you know, in terms of side quests that, say, something like the Saboteur or Grand Theft Auto, of course, have got. But nonetheless, you can go around and you'll see enemies around randomly or in set-piece places, and you can choose to engage or you can ignore them. But basically, it does involve a huge map in the scheme of things, and you're going from place to place, just missions essentially, but just more in an open world environment. So I do really like it. Again, I want to stress it is open world, but it's kind of like a basic form of it. But nonetheless, it does give you that sense of relative freedom. But the one thing about this game, well, two things really. I'll mention that first one second now. The first one I'll mention is that there's a real good kind of camaraderie and relationship between the four main characters in the game, one of which obviously you control, stating the obvious. And it's quite funny, it's quite down to earth, it's quite comedic. Now, the other thing the game's got going for it is the mechanics, and it's blowing things up. So if you see an enemy and he's in a building, no problem, just take out the C4, take out a grenade, or maybe your bazooka or some kind of explosive, and blow a hole in the wall and maybe kill the enemy, or enemies. Or, conversely, you could be in a situation where you're being pinned down, and because it's a relatively speaking, like I say, open world game, you can blow a hole in the wall of the building you're in and just run away and go away the other side and just escape. So it's really clever how they've done that. And it's not every single building or every single part of the building is destructible, but most of it is, in my experience. And it really changes the dynamics. It's really, really good. And when they implemented that online as well, because I did play this, you know, back in the day, I really liked that. It was a really exciting, innovative, just about got the word out, aspect of gaming, and I really liked it. So I like how they've incorporated it into the single-player campaign as well. So yeah, I reckon you should give it a go. It's really good, it's really cheap. If you're into those kind of games like Medal of Honor and Call of Duty, with a hint of Grand Theft Auto and the Saboteur and all those kind of things, then definitely give it a go. The ending, whilst I'm not going to spoil, not the literal ending, there's kind of a cut scene where it kind of sets it up for a sequel. I mean, that's not a spoiler, because everyone should know Bad Company 2 came out nearly 10 years ago. But just before that happens, the main kind of ending of the game is quite funny and kind of made me laugh. Not hysterically, but it was quite amusing nonetheless, and kind of really suited the characters. So I really like it. And again, if you've not played Battlefield Bad Company, give it a go. It is really good. And I like it. There's a lot of weapons to discover, a lot of gold to find, like collectibles around the map. Some of them are really hard to find, because I explored quite well, or so I thought, and I haven't got them all. In fact, I've probably got less than 50%. So if I ever want to go back and do that, I can. And again, explore that, relatively speaking, open world a little bit more. So that's that. And then the other game I've been playing, you can see it behind me on the 360. It's called Split Second, and I've been really enjoying this, I've got to be honest. It's really good. Now, this came out in 2011, I think. Now, it surprises me that I didn't buy it, because back in 2011 was my kind of heyday of the Xbox 360 and the PS3. But for some reason, I just didn't really give it a go. Maybe I had too many games. Maybe it's that thing again of being consumed and having too much. But I've recently picked it up. It was like $5. $5. And I'm really enjoying Last Gen right now as well. Really enjoying it. I thought I'd left the 360 alone. Not forever, but for a long time. But I've really gone back to it. And I'm having a great deal of fun. And the graphics are still great. Yeah, they're not as good as modern stuff. Of course they're not. The PS4 and the Xbox One. Which in itself, those consoles are on their last legs now. But it still looks good. So basically, Split Second is a cross between Burnout, it's that word again, and like a Ridge Racer. It's an arcade racing game with very much an emphasis on blowing things up. And you blow things up by accumulating a drift score by, funnily enough, drifting. And it works in like 3 stages, 2 blue bars and then like an orange bar. And as you're racing, the more your drift fills up, the more you can trigger explosions, like set pieces. Like an oil tanker will go off, or something will drop from the sky, like a grenade, or a helicopter will drop a bomb, or some kind of advertising hoarding will fall down, and in theory hit the cars, or a car, or however many are in front of you, in front of you, and they can blow them up, and you can then, in theory, overtake them and go into first place. You don't have to use all the set pieces and the boosts or the drift. You don't have to do it, but it really helps. That's the purpose of the game. But at its core, it's basically just a driving game, an arcade style, but very reliant on the drift, like I say, because you have to trigger the explosions. But you don't have to, but it helps. Especially as you get later on. I guess you will have to later on, because the cars are so powerful that you're not going to out-sprint them or outspeed them, so you will need help from all the set pieces. So yeah, graphics are really good. At times, the set pieces which you trigger, or I should say the computer can do it to you as well, so something can kind of come hurtling towards you, and you've got to kind of escape and manoeuvre out the way at the last second. It's very clever. Some of the things it can do, like you can see an open door, and you'll think, oh, I'll go that way, because it's got like multiple routes. And just as you're about to approach it, like the door will come down, because the computer opponent has triggered that set piece, and you'll crash into it, and you'll think, you swine. But you can do it to the computer as well. So it's really, really clever. It reminds me a little bit like Blur, which is another amazing game on the Xbox 360 and the PS3. But the emphasis on Blur, it's got much more of a neon-drenched kind of environment. But the emphasis is more on weaponry, you know, picking up power-ups. Whereas this one, you don't pick up power-ups. Like I say, you accumulate drift to trigger explosions around the race courses. So yeah, I really like that. The computer control players can be very, very challenging at times, unfair on other occasions. But it's just a buzz. It is, I found, one of those games where you just want one more go. I found it really difficult to put it down last night. I played it for about an hour and a half, really late at night as well. So I really like it, and I'm just really surprised that I didn't play it first time round. And of course, you need to see the spines. There we go. So yeah, really surprised I didn't play it first time round. No excuses, what can I say? But I'm really enjoying it now. And it just goes to show that, you know, it doesn't matter. Even if it's like, what, 7, 8, 9 years later, I'm buying it now and I'm really liking it. It's really good. And then last but not least, speaking of new videos, I will have a music video eventually. I will get into the groove of doing them. I know I keep threatening it every single video. It's ridiculous. But just very, very briefly, I've been listening to a band called The Dandies, and this is called Symphonic Screams. This is The Dandies' one and only album. Their debut album, their last album. It came out in 1998. I was going to say 97, but no, 1998. So it's basically Britpop, but post-Britpop. An element of kind of pop and rock in there as well. Britpop was kind of moving away a little bit to sort of more of a lo-fi kind of sound. When we had like, you know, like Urban Hymns kind of came out. And Embrace and all those kind of bands. They were still embracing, if you excuse the pun, Britpop style music, but they were moving away. Even Blur's self-titled debut album in 97, it was very much kind of Blur of old, but Blur of new, that late 90s kind of sound, which was very different from the mid-90s Britpop sound. But nonetheless, there's some very Britpop-esque sounds and songs in this on this album. Songs such as Dirty Weekend, All That You Do, I Want to Be Like You, the Butterfly Song, very much kind of in that Britpop mould. So yeah, this band I think would have escaped a lot of people, would have passed a lot of people by. They didn't have many hits, you know, but those songs I've just mentioned, I think they all, maybe apart from one, had an official video to it. But not a lot of people will remember them. I'm not being like kind of, you know, funny by saying that. Maybe everyone has. Maybe it was just me. But I'm going to hazard a guess. From the people I've spoken to, not many people know who they are, as one album would probably testify. So yeah, they didn't really take off. Band from Yorkshire, I believe. But for one album to release one record, I think it's actually pretty good. But really, you've got to like that kind of Britpop, post-Britpop sound. If you do, check it out. I will put one song in the description box, so feel free to check it out, see what you think. It might be your cup of tea, it might not. And then when I do a music video, not if, the very next one I do, it will be on it, and I'll talk about it maybe in a little bit more detail. So there we go. There's my little bit of a haul of sorts as to what I've bought and been playing and listening to and been watching recently. And that's it for another vid. It's gone on for bloody ages. Of course it has. I cannot do short vids. I'm going to try and go back to it and edit it slightly. Maybe make a few jump cuts. I don't really like them, but just to try and make it a little bit shorter. But it's still going to clock in around about 45 minutes. But at least it's better than an hour. Even 59 minutes is better than an hour. And it's certainly better than 2 hours, which is what they've been in the past. So until my next vid, which I think will be a pickup vid very, very soon, then thank you for watching, take it easy, and see you later.